Our next speaker is Tommy Ohlsson. He's a full professor of theoretical physics since 2008 at KTH, Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm. He's a member of the arXiv Member Advisory Board between 2013 and 2018. He's the coordinating editor of the scientific journal Nuclear Physics B and was between 2005 and 2010 a research fellow at the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences. In 2003, Ohlsson was awarded the Gustafsson Prize. Please welcome Tommy Ohlsson. And he will talk about open access publishing with arXiv.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for the invitation to come here and talk about arXiv and a little bit about open access. I mean, the previous talk, we heard a lot about open access. I will just wrap it up quickly. But before that, I just want to introduce what I will be talking about. So first, some introductory slides about open access, for those of you who don't know what it is. Then I'm going to talk about arXiv. It's supposed to be spelled out like archive, not in any other way. Then there is another strange acronym that I will discuss also. I will give some useful references, and at the end, I will pose some questions. They might be provocative. So before we go into open access, may I just ask you, how many of you are familiar with arXiv? Raise your hand. Okay, so 10, 20% maybe. Okay, so that will be interesting for you to see what it is about. Okay, so open access, we heard about that. So this is the definition on Wikipedia. Open access is the practice of providing unrestricted access via the internet to peer-reviewed scholarly research. It is most commonly applied to scholarly journal articles, as we have heard. But it is also increasingly being provided to theses, book chapters, and scholarly monographs. So free access to all these kind of materials. So we heard about articles being published, open access. So in journals, they are basically divided into two different categories. We have the OA, or open access journals, where the readers can access the papers without any financial or legal barriers. And then we have subscription-based journals. This is a journal where the reader or an institution or a library pays a subscription fee, and then you get access to that journal. And many of these subscription journals, they don't have any charge for authors to publish in them, but this is different from different fields. So basically you can say that who pays. So for an open access journal, it's basically the writer, the author, who pays for that. Whereas for a subscription-based journal, it's the reader who pays for those journals. And then in some cases for subscription-based journals, you also have a contribution that needs to be given from the author in order to publish there, so part of the cost or the money comes from there. Okay, so then we heard about, I think in previous talk was mentioned hybrid OA. But there are different models of open access, and different countries have decided about different policies on which of these kind of open access things should hold for the researchers who gets funding from different state organizations. And one of them is gold open access. So this is a model under which a fee is paid per paper by the authors, as we told before, their institution or the funding body to make their paper freely available. And then there is green open access that is archiving of a paper in a subject or institutional repository, it is generally the author's final peer-reviewed version, not the published version that is then publicly open. And many journals impose restrictions on these. They set some embargo time, that after a certain embargo time, then you can put it on a repository. And no contribution is then made to the cost of publication. And this model is basically financed by subscription fees to journals from libraries and institutions. And then we have the hybrid OA, that is basically a subscription-based journal where some certain articles within that journal are published with an open access fee that is paid by the author, institution, or library. So this was just a short introduction to open access, the different kind of models, and what's the difference is between open access and subscription-based journals. So now I'm turning into the main part of my talk, which will be about arXiv. So this is an electronic preprint server or electronic preprint repository. And this is used basically in the fields of mathematics, physics, astronomy, computer science, quantitative biology, statistics, and quantitative finance. So there are some different areas of research where this is used, and this is freely. Everything is online and it's free of use. You don't need to pay to put it there, and you don't need to pay in order to read it. Basically, in many fields of mathematics and physics, basically all scientific papers go into arXiv. arXiv was created by Paul Ginsberg, who is a physicist and a computer scientist, and it started in 1991. So next year it will be 25 years since it started. And it's maintained and operated by Cornell University Library with guidance from two boards, the Scientific Advisory Board and the Member Advisory Board, and I'm a member of the Member Advisory Board. And it contains close to 1,100,000 e-prints since it started. This is how the web page looked like when you go into arXiv. It's actually very non-flashy. This has been asked about people that are using it, if want to turn it into something that looked more, but people want it to stay in this way, at least the people that arXiv maintainers and developers are asking. So this is how arXiv looks like, and there is some counter up there just below arXiv.org, which says how many e-prints that are stored on arXiv. This was a screenshot from yesterday. So what about peer review and open access at arXiv? So it's not entirely true that there is no peer review at arXiv, but we can see here, although it's not peer reviewed, there exists a collection of moderators for each subject area that review submissions and may recategorize any e-print that comes into another topic. And for most cases, these lists of moderators, or people that are allowed to moderate papers and actually to get rid of them from arXiv, they are publicly available. There also exists some engine created by Paul Ginsberg that indicates that there is a material that is duplicated from something else. Then it turns out and becomes a comment and saying that this is a large text overlap with some other material that exists on arXiv or elsewhere. It's also not entirely true that anyone can submit or upload a paper to arXiv. In January 2004, an endorsement system was created, which should ensure that the content is relevant and of interest to the scientific community. This should stop most of the, in quotation mark, crackpot papers that, and there has been all, you should not, there is, if you turn around the word arXiv, it becomes Vixra, and there is another server that contains 10,000 preprints, which are basically crackpot papers. So these are the people who are not allowed to get endorsed and to upload papers on arXiv. Actually, most of the submissions to arXiv is done using LaTeX, but there are also possibility to upload your papers as a PDF. But I think that arXiv strongly suggests against that. Listings of newly submitted articles in areas of interest are available via the website. And also you can subscribe to email alerts that goes out every weekday in the morning in Sweden and in other times because it's one single time that it goes out. So 5 days a week you get a list of papers in your field that are of interest to you. And as I said, access, there is no restrictions. It's free for both authors and readers. Some statistics from arXiv. These figures show the different areas, the different color coding represent different areas. So for example, my area, which is the dark bluish HEP, which is this band here, this has basically been constant and not changing so much in the number of submissions. But since it was created basically for high-energy physics, you can see in this graph that from the beginning it was totally dominated by high-energy physics submissions. But this has then changed over time, and you can see now that one of the largest area is math. Of course, then high-energy physics is just one part of physics, whereas the math is here, the total math. So if you add all these areas there plus high-energy physics, condensed matter, and astrophysics phenomenology, you see that basically physics is the dominating field. Math comes after, and then you have computer science, and then some perturbations on that. So this is how the submission rate development has been doing from 1991. If we look at monthly submission rates, so this is how it's basically linearly increasing here, and it's now up to about 9,000 submissions of ePrint papers per month. And then down, how is from reading, this has basically exploded and is now up to about over 10 million downloads per month using arXiv. This is just some other site where each It's supposed to be small circles, colored circles on the screen in this picture, in this black box. And each of these circles representing a paper. And the brighter the paper, the circle is, the newer the paper, and the bigger the circle is, the more citations. So up there you can see two yellow spots. That's the Atlas and CMS collaboration papers that published the results of finding the Higgs boson, and which are on arXiv. And then you can see some green spots there, which is basically some theoretical papers about extra dimensions. And then there's some Planck data. And then some other more bright spots up there is Diabay collaborations results from neutrino physics. So this is some sort of an overview of the content of arXiv. Was going to mention a little bit about arXiv in Sweden. There is actually 3 of the universities in Sweden that are members that is contributing financially to arXiv, and this is Chalmers, KTH, and Uppsala University. KTH has paid a little bit more than the other 2. However, if you look at the institutional usage from 2014, there is Uppsala University, Stockholm University, Chalmers, and KTH in the following order. I see, however, that if there is some representatives from Stockholm University here, you are a heavy user of arXiv, but you're not contributing financially. Usage from Sweden, 2% of the world's total usage comes from Sweden. I think this is based on downloads, mostly. Funding from Sweden is 1.6, so some contribution from Stockholm University, and we will be up to the amount that we should be paying. So this I said as a member, advisory board member. Okay, so I will just go through a scheme of the green open access model and related to arXiv. So these bullet point here basically describes how it works in my field and how we do it when we publish material. So when a manuscript is ready, according to the authors, this paper is then sent to arXiv. We call that version 1. That's the preprint. That goes to the preprint server, arXiv. And then this has been in the community, something that developed. Then you wait for comments from the scientific community for about 1 week. Most of the comments that arrive are, "You forgot to cite my paper," which is highly relevant for your work. In some cases it's true, in most cases it's not. Then after that time, sometimes you also receive really valuable comments. Done so in my research, myself received comments from people that will improve the quality of the paper, and you can change that then before you submit your manuscript to an international journal with the usual peer review system. And then in the case that this manuscript will be accepted, then you will have the quality stamp from the journal that this has gone through peer review. And then proofs of paper will arrive in the usual machinery, and then if there are changes in the proofs, or if there were some changes coming from comments from the scientific community, then normally we are updating then version 1 to version 2, that is the postprint version. That cannot be done, of course, if the journal in question have some embargo or is not allowing for this to happen. And then the paper is published by the journal, and then eventually arXiv will actually also update the reference on the page for that paper, including the journal reference. So this model here basically works due to institutional subscription fees that are paid to the journals from the institutions. I was just to mention, I mentioned a crazy other preprint repository, the Vixra, but there are others more serious such repositories, and the first one has already been mentioned today. Then there is the PeerJ preprints, also in biology and computer science. And then it's Science Paper Online, which is actually a Chinese server, and they accept in any fields. Okay, to start to round off, I just wanted to mention, I don't know, 20% of you were familiar with arXiv from when we started. How many of you do know about SCOAP 3? Not some, a couple. That's the sponsoring consortium for open access publishing in particle physics. And it's a global consortium of organizations in high-energy physics, particle physics, that is, of physics research centers and leading international libraries. And its goal is to convert essential journals in particle physics that are presently subscription-based journals to open access journals. And in this initiative, there is a number of rather famous journals that are participating. Physics Letters B, Nuclear Physics B, Advances in High Energy Physics, Chinese Physics C, Journal of Cosmology and Astroparticle Physics, New Journal of Physics, Acta Physica Polonica B, Progress of Theoretical and Experimental Physics, and European Physics Journal C, and Journal of High Energy Physics. Some of these are rather high-impact journals within this specific field of particle physics. And it works like this, that in Sweden and in Europe and in other parts of the world, there are other main libraries or other organizations that are partners. In Sweden, it's the National Library of Sweden's Kungliga Biblioteket that is paying basically a chunk of money to this SCOAP 3 that is then dividing out this to these selected SCOAP 3 journals, and then this pays for the open access in that field. So if I submitted a paper just recently to Journal of High Energy Physics, which is a journal of which is now totally open access, but I, as an individual scientist, do not pay a single crown. Indirectly, I pay some part, I guess, through the KB, but it's the Kungliga Biblioteket in Sweden that pays for the open access fee. These are just some references. The first two ones are to guides of open access that has come from two different publishers. I wrote something in a magazine called Fysik Aktuellt about what is meant by open access. And I also written about this scheme of how you publish with arXiv in high energy physics, was published in Nature. Okay, so to round off, some open, provocative questions that we might discuss further. Is arXiv good for the scientific community? Is the green open access arXiv model a good way of publishing? Can scientists from other fields that today do not use arXiv start to use arXiv in the future? Who should pay for green open access arXiv model? and are initiatives like School Up 3 good? So thank you.
Thank you, Tommy Ohlsson. Do anyone has any questions at the moment? Otherwise, I start with a Twitter question, and that is, why did arXiv stay focused on a limited number of subject areas over the years? I mean, have you considered including
arXiv is perfectly open to open up for new subject fields. You have to set up a suggestion and to basically select some people that are willing to moderate a new section in arXiv, but there is no problem in extending arXiv to any other subject fields. So that just has to go through the scientific board, and I don't know.
But do you have initiatives within arXiv, or do
No,
you want
no.
the rest?
No, it should come from the scientific community. So basically all these different sections have come from the community itself, and then asked if it's possible to be included in arXiv.
Okay, and one question here.
Do you know what percentage of submissions to the arXiv are moderated out in the end?
No, I don't know that figure by heart.
Ballpark?
I could... Actually, it works like this, that in the case... So the new submissions from one day, 24 hours, is being able to... then the moderators are being able to dismiss that paper, and I mean, that it will not be published in the next listing, or to put it on hold, waiting for further reactions from other moderators. But if the moderators do not take their chance in stopping a paper or putting it on hold, then it will be put online.
And can one moderator stop a publication from appearing, or is this a committee? Is there like an editorial board?
I think that it's enough that a single moderator stops it, and it doesn't need, or maybe it might also be differently organized within different areas, because different areas have their own moderator team, and there is I don't unfortunately do not know too much about how this moderation procedure goes, because this is closed in the community.
Okay, thank you again, Tommy Ohlsson.
Okay.